Hey everyone, as you are very aware, we have an assignment due this week, and I'm going to be posting a series of videos to help you get through it. There are a lot of resources that are available highlighted in the resource announcement that I post and also in the learning modules, I believe. I am going to be sharing my screen and actually walking you through the Excel components of the assignment with the hope that you have an additional resource to help you get through the assignment. Um, a little bit of background, there is going to be some instances where I deviate from the actual PDF resources, but it's just to give you another way of doing things. And I also hope, since we're using the Excel formulas to get the information that you need instead of the toolkit, that it would prove to be helpful to you and you would be able to actually understand kind of behind the scenes of what's going on. All right, so let's get started. In this video, I'm actually going to download our data set and walk you through how you would randomize your data set and get your information. So let's get started. So here we have the Module 2 assignment guidelines and rubric. I think that this information is very important. In the prompt, it tells you everything that you need to do, and it's also a very good idea to look down in the rubric and make sure that you have checked the boxes for all of these elements, because this is how I'm going to grade you. Grading is very objective in the sense of these bullet points need to be met in order for you to get a particular grade. All right, now that we went over that, let's scroll back up. And the first hyperlink is going to be the data that we need to use. So I'm going to click here. It's going to ask me if I want to save it. Yes, I do. And it's going to pop up in the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up. Okay. So what I'm going to do is enable editing. And if you read in the assignment is asking you to select a particular region. And from there, we're going to create our random sample of 30. So to do that, we need to figure out what regions are actually in this data set. So the fastest way, I think, to do this is to bring your mouse over to number 5, and then you get this weird black arrow that's pointing to the right. So we're going to go ahead and click where number 5 is. I'm left clicking and it highlights the entire row. From there, we're going to make sure that we're on the home tab, and then we're going to go into sort and filter. We're going to click that little arrow, left click again, and we're going to click filter. This allows us, I'm going to just click anywhere to get that row unhighlighted. This gives us little arrows, or I guess you can call it an arrow, but it's really missing the line. We have little arrows for all of our columns that shows us the information that's within it. Particularly, we care about the region. So we're going to left click on this arrow, and it lets us know all of the regions that are in our data set. We just need to pick one, and we need to make sure that it has more than 30 data points so that we can create a sample. So I'm going to click this box next to select all to unselect everything. And I'm going to choose Mid-Atlantic. Okay, here I have everything for Mid-Atlantic, but my data set's not going to make the cut. If I look at the bottom, I see that I only have 12 data points out of the total of 978, and I need to create a sample of 30. So this isn't going to work. So I'm going to unselect Mid-Atlantic, and I'm going to select Pacific. All right, when I do that, I have much better results. I see that I have 89 data points out of the 978, so I have more than I need to actually go ahead and create the sample. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click cell A5, which says region, and I get this fat plus sign for the cursor. What I'm going to do is hold down on the left click. I'm going to drag to the right until I get median square feet, and I'm going to drag down until I get everything in the Pacific data set. I'm going to lift my finger off of the left click, and then I'm going to press and hold Control and press C to copy this mini data set. I'm going to press the plus sign at the bottom to get a new sheet. And what I'm going to do is put my cursor in A1. It's already there. I'm going to hold Control and press V, and that pastes everything in the Pacific for me. Just to do a check, remember we said that there were 89 points or 89 data points in the data set. If we add the row that actually has our titles, that would be 89 plus 1, so 90 rows altogether. If I scroll down, I see that I actually have 90 rows, so what I was expecting Excel to do, it did. I'm a very, 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 very big advocate for labeling your stuff. So that you know you're going to be using this data set for the paper next week also. So it's always a good idea to make sure that you label your stuff so that you know what's going on. So if you have to circle back, things make sense to you, and it doesn't take you that long to figure out what it is that you actually did previously. To label this tab, all I need to do is put my cursor down to sheet 1 and double left click. And then it highlights. I'm going to just call this PACIFIC. Just so you know, I went into math because I can't spell. So if I have typos, please forgive me. In your paper, I highly recommend that you use spell check. But just so you know, I don't grade heavily on grammatical errors because I am naturally prone to having them. So what I'm going to do is actually label this sheet Pacific data set, just so I remember what it is. We're not done yet, but right now we have a subset of the data, which is for our region, which is what we're going to need to randomize our data set. Now we are going to create a random set of numbers that's going to help us to create our sample. To do that, we need to use an Excel function. Before I get started, I'm going to unselect all my data. So I'm just going to put my cursor in G1 and left click. And again, I'm a big advocate of labeling your stuff. So because we're going to create a new column in column G, I am actually going to name it. I like my stuff to be uniform. You definitely don't have to do this, but I'm going to drag this title over and then change it so that the formatting is the same. To do that, there's this little square in this corner. So I'm going to put my cursor by that square. I get a very thin plus sign, and I'm going to drag it over to G. There, I'm going to left click when I have the fat plus sign, and it's going to highlight that cell for me. I'm going to go up. This is my formula bar. I'm going to go up and highlight it and change this title to random number. Okay. Then I'm going to press enter. Okay. So now we're going to create the random numbers that help us to organize our data set and randomize it in a sense, or get a random sample. The resource that is in the PDF tells you to use the RAND function. That is RAND, but I like using RAND between because it allows me to pick how I want my numbers to look. And me personally, I like working with whole numbers and working with decimals. Both of them will get you the achieved effect of getting a random sample. It's just a matter of how these numbers are presented. In order to get the integers the way I like to do it, we're going to make sure that our cell is in G2, which is going to be our first data point for our random numbers. And we're going to press equal, RAND. And then in the bottom, what I like about Excel so much is the fact that it actually shows you, once you start typing a formula, all of the formulas that pertain to that particular sequence of letters. And it helps you to kind of break down on a formula if you don't exactly know what it is, or if you are just curious of what random formulas exist and you want to see more about them. So I'm actually interested in RAND between, which is the last one. So I am going to left double click on that so that it populates for me. And it's telling me that I need to provide it with a number for my bottom, meaning that the lowest number that I want to use, and a number for my top, the highest number I want to use. The good thing about the Excel formulas is it always tells you your sequence. If you can see, bottom is bolded because I already told it what formula I wanted to use, but now I need to input something for bottom. So it's bolded. And if you hover over it, it also gives you a hyperlink. You can click that hyperlink for more information. I want my numbers to be between 1 and 1,000. I know that my data set has 89 values, so 1,000 is a great number, but you can just choose any arbitrary number that you know your data set is going to not exceed. For example, it wouldn't be a good idea for me to choose random numbers between 1 and 10, because then I'm going to end up having duplicate numbers in my data set, and that may or may not help me when it comes to getting a random sample. So I'm going to choose 1 and then comma and then 1,000, close parentheses, and enter. And that gives me a number. What I'm going to do is now fill this entire data set with my formula very quickly. To do that, again, you see this little green square in the bottom right-hand corner of my cell. I'm going to hover my mouse above it. My mouse then changes from a fat white plus to a very skinny black plus, and I'm going to double left click. Now my formula has been filled in for my entire data set. Please be careful not to unselect the column as it is with all of your values. If you do, it's okay. I guess I will quickly show you that now. I will also click to just show you don't have to do this, but show you and confirm that all it did was copy the exact same formula to all of these cells. As you can see in our formula bar, the formula is exactly the same. If you accidentally clicked and your entire column, excluding the header, has not been, is still not selected, we're just going to take the fat cursor, the fat plus, and select the first number, and then we're going to hold down on our left click, and we're just going to go all the way down and select all 89 of these numbers. And now it's reselected. What we want to do now that we've confirmed that our entire data set has a number associated with it, we're going to hold down on Control, press C to copy, hold down on Control again, and press V to paste. Now we're going to take our cursor, and we should have these moving dotted lines going around our data set. We want to take our cursor and make sure it's in the middle of that data set, and we want to right click. When we do that, we see that we have multiple paste options. What we want is this paste option with the clipboard and 1, 2, 3 at the bottom. That means it's going to change our formula that we put in there, our ran between, from 1 to 1,000 to the actual number value that it populated when we calculated it. This is crucial. Your numbers may change, but that's because every time you do something with one of these cells, the function recalculates, and then you end up getting another number. Since we need to sort this information to get our sample, it's very important that we turn these numbers into numbers and we get rid of that formula, because we'll never have a way of verifying that our sort worked the way we intended. So now that these numbers are actual numbers, we can go ahead and sort our data. To do that, we are going to move our cursor to this little space between the A and the 1. We're going to left click, and then our whole sheet highlights. We're going to make sure that we're on the Home tab, and we're going to go over to this editing bar. Again, we're going to press this little down arrow by Sort and Filter, and we're going to choose Custom Sort. Okay, now this little pop-up comes up, and it's going to ask us, what column do we want to sort by? What are we sorting on, and what's the order? So in this little down arrow by the column that says Sort By, we're going to choose Random Number. And then from there, it auto-populates the smallest to largest, which is what we want. You can change this, but it just makes life complicated. So I would keep it just the same, and then I would just select OK. Now we see that our random number generator worked as intended. Our numbers are going from smallest to largest. Now we have a randomized data set. Our data is sorted randomly based on the random number generator. Now, we still have the full specific data set. What we want is a sample of 30 values. Because we also want to keep the column headers, we're going to need 31 rows total, which is our 30 data points, plus the column header. And that's how we're going to get our sample now that our sample has been randomized by sorting by the random number that we created. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our cursor, we're going to highlight A1, we're going to hold down on the left click, and we're going to scroll all the way down till we get to number 31. Again, 31 corresponds to our 30 data points plus our header column. And then we're just going to go over and make sure that we got everything for this data set, all of the data values. At the very bottom, next to that green square I keep talking about, you see that it says 31 rows. Oops. Let's see if I can get it to come back up. I'm going to reselect my data so I can get that to come back up. Okay. You see it says 31 rows and 7 columns. That lets us know that when we copied over and we got everything in our data set, that we still maintain the fact of having 31 rows. So we have our 30 data points, our complete 30 data points, as well as our header column. So now we can take our finger off of the left click and we can Control C, and that's going to copy our data set. We should see those moving lines going across the border again. We're going to press this plus button to get a new sheet. And then we're going to hit Control or hold Control, and press V. And now we have our data set. We can confirm that there's 31 rows only, which is our 30 data points. As you can see, just to confirm, our letter counter tells us we have 30 rows. So those are 30 data points. And we have all of the information regarding those 30 data points. Now, this is your sample. It is up to you what you want to keep or lose. Me personally, what I'm going to do, because I'm a stickler for labeling stuff, I'm going to call this complete sample. Just in case I happen to need something later on. And then I'm going to add another tab that's going to be this modified, this information, but modified. To do that, I'm going to right click on complete sample. And then I'm going to select move or copy. I'm going to check this box that says create a copy. And then I'm going to go to move to the end and hit OK. All right. Now I'm going to rename this. Again, I'm sorry, I didn't specify when I was naming the sample. To rename a tab, we just double left click and then the information highlights for us to write in. So I'm going to change the name of this from complete sample 2 to sample variables, or needed sample variables. So I am clear. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because the assignment tells us that we only care about the median square feet and the median listing price. So I don't confuse myself. I'm just going to create a table that has just what I need and get rid of all the extra stuff. To do that, I'm going to take my cursor up to the letter A. I get this downward arrow, and I'm going to left click once. And while I'm holding down on the left click, it turns into a plus sign. That's good. And then I'm going to drag it over and select the state because I don't need that. I'm going to also select the county because I don't need that. And I'm going to delete. How I got to this is I right clicked, excuse me again for not being clear. and I'm scrolling down to delete. When I do that, it deletes that information. Now, what I'm going to do is select column B. Again, I'm going to go up to letter B and I'm going to left click. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select delete because I do not need that information. And we're done with our random numbers, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go up to letter C. I'm going to left click to highlight the entire column. I'm going to right click and choose delete. Now that I have the variables that I want, this is not going to be clear to you now, but knowing what the assignments are, we're going to do a few small things to clean up this data set to make life easier in the long run. The first thing we're going to do is highlight one of the titles. So I'm going to start with A1. And you notice how everything is lowercase. This doesn't make for a good title. So what I'm going to do is I am going to capitalize the first letter in every word. So I just left click to highlight A1. Now I can go in my formula bar and I can left click. I see my cursor and I'm going to go ahead and make those changes. And hit enter when I'm done. I'm going to do the same thing for the median square feet. So I am going to left click on B1 to get where that title is. And then I'm going to left click in my formula bar. And then I'm going to make those changes. If it's helpful to you, these are your titles, but you can make your titles whatever you want. For example, if it's very confusing to you to keep these two columns straight, what you can do is left click, and the same way we made our changes to the title, we left click up top in the formula bar, and we can do space, open parentheses, lowercase y, close parentheses, and then enter. So now we know which variable is which. Again, I'm going to left click on where my header is, left click in the formula bar, space, open parentheses, X, close parentheses. And there you have it. There's your constant reminder. And finally, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my X variables in front of my Y variables. To do this, what we need to do is bring our cursor to where letter B is. And what we're going to do is left click to highlight the entire column. We're going to right click to get the menu to open. And we're going to choose cut. Now we're going to go to the first column. So we're going to put our cursor right by letter A. And we are going to right click and we are going to tell it to insert cut cells. And now we have our X variables in front of our Y variables. This is not 100% necessary, but we are going to be creating scatter plots, and Excel always assumes that your X variable is placed before your Y variable when automatically creating these scatter plots for you. So by doing this, we just make life easier for ourselves so that our variables are not reversed and we don't run into problems later. But now we have completely created a randomized sample and we have our variables that we need. So just to confirm, down here in our different tabs, we have our complete sample here. And we also have our needed sample variables that we will use for our analysis. I hope that this information was helpful. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or to reach out on the discussion boards if it's a general question, because a lot of students might have the same question that you do. Thank you for your time. And again, I hope this was helpful.